Okay, good evening, class. This is Mr. Lowe with lesson 5.1, which involves with a quick review of our fractions. Let's get right to it. The objective for this lesson is to review key fraction concepts, to practice solving parts and whole problems, and finding fraction parts for whole numbers. So here we go. Now, when we talk about fractions, we want to describe a couple of situations when you use fractions. Perhaps in cooking, you've seen that. If you've ever cooked anything with your mother or father, you know you need to add a quarter cup of milk or 3/4 cups of this or that. So that's one good example. Sometimes we use fractions when we're describing numbers, 2 2/3 or 2 1/5. But let's go ahead and look at where fractions were invented to express numbers that are between whole numbers. So if I have, if we're looking at numbers like 1 all the way to 2, there are numbers in between these two. Could be 1 1/2, 1 2/3, 1 3/3. Actually, 1 3/3 would be 2, so that wouldn't work. So let's go ahead and do the next one down here, please. Fractions can show measures between whole numbers on rulers or scales. And if we go and get my ruler here very quickly, we can take a good look at the use of a ruler. We can see that the ruler is broken up into what we're calling 16th marks. There are 16 equal spaces in between this 1-inch mark and this 2-inch mark. So the ruler is going to be broken up into 16ths. We would say that would be 1/16 would be the distance between this line and this line. This would be 2/16, 3/16, 4/16, 5/16, 6/16, and so on. So that's a good example of how rulers are used for fractions. Whoops, let's get rid of that very quickly. And then fractions can name a part of a whole object or part of a collection of objects. So when we're looking at whole object, if I have a whole pizza, there's my one whole pizza, and because I'm, kind of hungry, I eat a quarter of it. I have had 1/4 of that pizza. Or if we're dealing with maybe a case of eggs, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. So I have 12 eggs in one box. So there's my whole, and I crack 4 of those eggs. I have cracked 4 out of 12 eggs. So again, kind of just gives you some quick examples of how we're using fractions in everyday life. And last but not least, most fractions are fractions of something. That is, they are referring to it as a whole. So again, kind of go back to the pizza. Most of the fractions we're going to deal with are fractions of the whole. Alrighty, so you're gonna want to be writing those down in your notebook, as well as the math message and whatnot. So we're going to move on quickly because last time I ran out of space and time. So what are the parts of a fraction? Fractions are broken up into 2 different parts called the numerator, and the bottom number is called the denominator. Now the denominator tells us the number of equal parts in our whole or our set. So again, if we go back to our pizza, if I go back to my pizza example, my whole pizza is made up of 4 parts. So there are 4 equal parts in that whole set. 4 is going to be my denominator. When we're dealing with our numerator, the numerator is how many parts of the whole are selected. So if I eat, let's have, I'm pretty hungry, so let's eat 2 slices of our pizza. So I eat 2 of those that are selected. So 2 over 4, so I have eaten 1/2 a pizza. I'm pretty hungry. This line right here is called our fraction bar. And the fraction bar basically means, let me switch this here. The fraction bar basically means divide. So we're taking our numerator, we're dividing it by our denominator, and that's another way to look at how we're dealing with fractions. One other thing that I found kind of interesting is that this fraction bar has a name, and that name is called a vinculum. I thought that was kind of a cool name. I never knew that before. So see, even I learned something in 5th grade math. So you guys should too. Vinculum. Hey, you never know. You might see that as an extra credit question on your test. Vinculum. Okay, so we are going to continue on now. Let's reset this page so I can use it again. Let's talk about some examples here very, very quickly. When we're dealing with examples about fractions, let's say if I have, I don't know, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Let's say I have 8 chips. So 8 chips is going to represent my whole. Let's kind of circle that. There's my whole. That is going to be my denominator because that is the number of chips in my whole. The other one that I want to do is, let's say I want to know how many of those are purple. Well, there's 1, 2, 3. So 3/8 of my entire set is purple. I could have also have said 1, 2, 3, 4, 5/8 of my entire set are pink. So you could use either one. It doesn't really matter. So that's just a very quick example. Some of the problems you're going to be doing tomorrow in class might be a little more challenging than this, but that's why we're going to work on them tomorrow as a group, and I think you guys will be okay. So this is kind of what we're going to be working on tomorrow. One other thing that I wanted to show you very quickly, again, just kind of going through quickly. You guys can rewind and slow it down if you need to, are these things called unit fractions. And unit fractions basically are when a whole is divided into equal parts, the unit fraction has a 1 as its numerator and names one of those equal parts. So again, let's take a look at our pizza example, because I like pizza and food. If we divide this into, this time we'll do it into 8, and just imagine that those are equal. This piece right here is going to represent 1/8. 1/8 of a piece of pizza. That's my unit fraction. Okay, so if this is 1/8 of my piece of pizza, then 2 sections would be 2/8. 3 sections would be 3/8, and so on and so forth. So that's going to be useful for us tomorrow. There's a couple of problems that deal with unit fractions. We'll go over those again, I think, as we get through. One of the examples that you might be able to use when we're dealing with unit fractions could be, let's say, excuse me, let's say, oh, Mr. Lowe drove, I don't know, 3/4 of the way from Cleveland to Columbus. Mrs. Lowe, she drove 1/4 of the way. If the total distance is 200 miles, I can spell, 200 miles, how much distance did I drive and how much distance did Mrs. Lowe drive? Well, let's figure out the unit fraction first, because that's going to be the easiest. If I have a total distance of 200 miles, I want to know what 1/4 of those miles are. So another way to look at it is, let's draw pictures. So if this represents 100 miles and this represents 200 miles, if I want to know what 1/4 of those are, I'm basically going to take these and cut them into 4 equal parts. This part would have 50 miles in it, this part would have 50 miles in it, this part would have 50 miles in it, and this part would have 50 miles in it. So Mrs. Lowe drove 1/4, which would represent 50 miles. And I drove 1, 2, 3/4, would represent 150 miles. I find it really, really nice and very useful to draw pictures out, especially when we're dealing with fractions. Draw things out. That pretty much concludes our quick lesson. This was just a quick overview. As you come in tomorrow and you get your math journal, you are going to want to turn to page 121, and we're going to start working through these. It says work with a partner. I'll allow you to work with a partner if you need to. You can use counters to help you solve the problem. You might want to just focus on using the dots over here. So we'll do the first one together. The set has 15 counters. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. What fraction of the set is black? Well, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 out of a total of 15. 6/15 of those counters. So that's kind of what we're working through tomorrow. You're going to work through 121, 122, which deals with more problems. This gets into more of the word type problems, which is kind of cool. I think you guys will be all right with these. And then when you finish, there'll be a set of math boxes to do. The math boxes, remember on the math boxes, we have the top 2 boxes deal with what we're learning about what we've done in the past. The middle box deals with what we're talking about today. And then the bottom box, especially this one number here, number 5, kind of talks about things that we're going to be doing later on again. So this one's really, really good, very useful for us. All right, well, I hope you guys enjoyed this quick video. We will see you bright and early tomorrow morning. Have a great evening.